All right, everybody, I am back, and I am back with a vengeance. And I'm sorry for the people that were expecting the episode to come on Sunday and then yesterday, but trust me, it was worth the wait, I promise you. Now, a lot has happened in the past week. A lot has happened in the past week. I want to address a couple of things, and then we're going to get to business. First and foremost, I know last week I said a couple times that I was kind of on the fence with Charlie Kirk, wondering like if he's really even dead. And I could tell you, after taking a step back and looking over everything again, and then doing some other research into something else that we're going to be talking about today, yeah, I'm pretty sure that he's dead. I would be extremely, extremely, extremely surprised if they actually faked it. You know, it's pretty funny, too, because you have some people out there that are completely convinced that Charlie Kirk faked his death and that, you know, it reinforces the theory that the whole world is a stage and all these other proven false flags that we know were faked, that, you know, they just start thinking that every time something happens that it's all just like an act. And then there are other people out there that are like, faked his death? What are you talking about? No shit that he's dead. And both sides are like so dead set and 100% sure that they're right. And being in the middle and listening to both sides of the argument, well, it's not even an argument because it's really just the people that think that he's still alive that are doing the arguing. But listening to both sides and seeing what people are going through and how they're processing it, I really entertained it. And not only that, but there was a period last week where I was like, oh my God, this guy really might be alive. But like I said, I took a step back. I went over everything again. And then I started thinking about the motivations and what it would have taken. Because it's not just about what it would have taken for Charlie to fake his death. It's the fact that he would have had to have been acting and in character for so long, for so many years, for such a large percentage of his time. I don't really think it's practical. It's possible. You know, it's like I always say, nothing's impossible, only improbable. But I would be very, very shocked if he is still alive. But there is one person that I do believe has been acting and has been faking and been in character for at least the last couple of years. And that is Erica Kirk. And like I said, I'm going to touch on a couple of things, but this episode is not going to be about the Charlie Kirk case. But a lot has happened. I mean, she went on her little tour. She had her meeting with Candace. Obviously, I made a couple episodes after that. But then we had AmFest. And I know some of you have been asking me, oh, Jimmy, you said you were going to, you know, you're doing probability models and that you're working on credibility reports. Like, do the episode. And listen, I'm going to do it right after the holidays. But you need to understand something. Right now, especially the past week or so, a lot of people are talking. A lot of evidence is coming out. There are a lot of allegations that are getting proven right, and there are a lot of statements that are getting proven wrong. So if I'd have done that episode too soon, it would be totally... I mean, in all honesty, I could have put the credibility report out at any time, but I was just waiting for certain things to get confirmed, one way or the other. You know, because there's been a lot of allegations, a lot of things have been up in the air, and I was really waiting for Erica Kirk to start talking more. I really was, and oh boy, did she. Erica Kirk, let me put it this way. Erica Kirk got caught in so many lies, that I got so pissed off that I made a whole video accusing Candace Owens of being a fraud for not just taking her head off right there and then. The whole reason I got upset with Candace Owens, I'm like, she's a fraud, she's Nancy Drew, she's controlled opposition. It is all because after a couple of statements from Erica Kirk, and then hearing Candace Owens say a couple of things that she said to her, that never got disputed, by the way. It was enough to put, spoiler alert, if I had a ranking on the credibility report for everybody involved in Turning Point USA, everybody involved in the investigation, every politician that's spoken on it, and every influencer from like the Steven Crowders and Ted Poole, whatever his fucking name is, Steven Crowder and Tim Pool, to Candace Owens, Baron Coleman, Ian Carroll, Erica Kirk is at the bottom. The bottom. Literally, Erica Kirk and Brian Harpole are the two least credible sources of information on the Charlie Kirk case. I want you to think about that for a second. I'll repeat it. Out of the whole Charlie Kirk investigation, and out of everybody that's been involved with Turning Point or spoken on it in any capacity on a mainstream or not mainstream level, big influencers, YouTubers, whatever you want to call it, people on X, Erica Kirk is the least credible source of information. What does that tell you? And like I said, that it's one thing for me to make a statement like that. And it's real easy for me to say that and be like, oh, but we're not going to get into it today. But I'm sorry. I've been waiting so long on these Epstein files. Because you want to talk about other bullshit that I was able to identify that I was waiting for? I was waiting months for these Epstein files to come out. And I knew that there was not going to be anything in there. You see some pictures and, oh, yeah, look, it's Bill Clinton in a hot tub and this one and that one. And they got a couple edited pictures of Michael Jackson that they were hoping was going to be some kind of tabloid front page. Oh, my God, it's Michael Jackson with kids. Yeah, nice try. Everybody saw through it, already got debunked. They edited the pictures. It was his own kids. Listen, Michael Jackson was innocent, okay? Michael Jackson was innocent. They were trying to set him up for over a decade because of his influence. Because of the influence he had and the power that he had in the music industry, and because of the influence that he had over the people. They needed to discredit him because Michael Jackson, he was literally one of the most famous and popular people in the whole world. And if he would have made a firm political stance, which he started, listen to the song, They Don't Really Care About Us, he had a lot of power. They needed to bring him down. They needed to. And, even now, 10 years, 15 years after he's dead, they're still kicking him when he's down? So disgusting. And the worst part about that is, Trump was his friend. You guys know that? You guys ever seen those videos when Michael Jackson was going through his trial? He's going through all that with the allegations against him. Donald Trump says that he actually let him stay at Trump Tower with his kids and that he knew he was innocent and that he trusted him with his children despite all the allegations. So for these Epstein files to come out and have all these redactions, and for Trump to let that get out there about Michael Jackson or try to put that out there about Michael Jackson, that's very, very disappointing. It tells me a lot of just how much of a snake Trump really is. Or you can look at it at just how much of a lame duck president that he is and how little power that he actually has. And then you got someone like AOC trying to say, oh, we see what you're doing. You're trying to push all the blame on Clinton. Listen, I got news for you. Clinton is guilty as fuck. Okay? And I don't think he was blackmailed either. I think he was complicit. I think whatever Bill Clinton and Ehud Barak and Prince Andrew and all these other scumbags were doing with Epstein, that it was recreational activity. I don't think that they were tricked into being in a room with stuff going on. And no. It's probably like that with a lot of people. I think the majority of people, once they saw what was going on, that they distanced themselves from it. I think a guy like Chris Tucker had no idea what kind of plane he was getting on and what was going on. And, Chris Tucker specifically, I think after a while, because he's a Christian, I think after a while, he looked around at the world that he was in and he got out because he didn't want to sell his soul. You're talking about a guy who was making $20 million a movie, maybe even more, who just one day decided, I don't want to do it anymore. I don't need the money. I'm good. And he disappeared for a while. What do you think made him do that? You know, same thing with Dave Chappelle, although he has no connection to Epstein. I mean, we all heard the story about Dave Chappelle, you know, after the first couple seasons of the Chappelle Show, when it was time to renegotiate the contract, they came to him with $50 million. And he turned it down. And next thing you know, it's all over the tabloids. Dave Chappelle smoking crack in Africa. Was Dave Chappelle really smoking Africa? Was Dave Chappelle really smoking crack in Africa? I mean, maybe. But you think that's why he turned down the money? I don't think so. I think he recognized the evil and the darkness, and he got away while he still could. And now that he's back and he's on top of the world and he's putting out great work and doing all these Netflix specials, who's he talking shit about? You know what I mean? Like, I don't know. But like I said, I've been waiting for a long time for this Epstein report to come out. And I've been telling everybody for months that I have my own files. I have my own report. And I made mine with public information that's accessible to everybody. And this episode, I'm going to try to simplify everything. I'll do like a deeper dive in the future and try to like really like get into the nitty gritty and, you know, all, you know, really, really break down the different people involved that I'm going to name, break down their history and their businesses and their connections. But for today, I just like want to kind of break it down into some sort of timeline with as few characters as possible, naming as few businesses as possible. And I just really want to paint a picture so that you guys understand what it is exactly that we're dealing with and why the Epstein files were all redacted. Because I promise you, it doesn't even have anything to do. I'm not going to say it doesn't have anything to do. But there is a lot more that was going on besides the stuff that we know about. There was a lot of things going on behind the scenes. Epstein was a real player in arms dealing. And he was like, Epstein was like the scumbag narcissist intelligence agent that worked in the deepest, darkest areas of the world. Like all the things that we're not supposed to know about and that we're not supposed to talk about. Epstein was the guy. You know? And there are a lot of reasons why they're trying so hard to conceal everything. And I truly believe that it's a big part of why Charlie Kirk got assassinated to begin with, and why a lot of people think that the whole thing was staged. I think that a lot of the people that think that Charlie Kirk isn't really dead believe that they faked the death to distract everybody from Epstein, especially because the day that he was killed, they were voting to not release the files. But like I said, I do believe Charlie Kirk is dead. And I think I have some really, really juicy Epstein files, and that I've connected a lot of dots that I'm sure other people have put it together. But I think that if there's anybody famous or anybody that has any like assets or anything that has put it together already, that they're afraid to say it because they don't want to get sued into oblivion. But lucky for me, I'm poor as fuck. I don't have any assets. And I really, like, the only thing they can do to me is kill me. And I'm not worried about that either. Like I said, I am a Christian. My allegiance is to God and the truth. So, I'm going to hit the intro. And while I do, I hope you like the video for me. Do me that favor. Subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. And buckle up, because today's going to be a great episode. My name is Baze, and welcome to Baze is Based. You know what? Because it is Christmas time, and I know the last couple of episodes have all been around Charlie Kirk, and a couple of you have been asking about these, credibility reports that I'm doing. I have a summary right here of Brian Harpol's. So this is a compressed summary. It's not like a detailed breakdown, like I could really go into describe everything. But here we go. The Brian Harpole Credibility Report Summary. Brian Harpole emerges in the Charlie Kirk case as a central but low credibility witness whose public statements materially conflict with verified video evidence. In his interview with Sean Ryan, Harpole offered categorical claims about medical response, security procedures, and scene conduct that later proved false or misleading when compared against the footage. These were not isolated slips. These inaccuracies spanned independent domains: medical description, operational signaling, object handling, and surveillance capability, indicating a pattern of narrative management, not confusion under stress. The most damaging are Harpole's categorical denials. He stated his team does not use hand signals that day, yet multiple videos show repeated, deliberate signaling, including a confirmed, repeatable gesture by Dan Flood in a separate context. This same gesture was used a second before Charlie was killed. He denied any items being passed after the footage. He denied any items being passed after the shooting, despite camera footage showing handoffs. He framed drone use as unavailable, while evidence shows a drone was flown earlier in that day and that authorization was feasible. On medical details, he had a dramatic account of blood exposure that was contradicted by the footage. Each contradiction independently degrades credibility. Together, they invalidate his testimony as a stabilizing explanation for anomalies. As a result, Harpole's role in the report flips from explanatory to negative evidence. His denials no longer suppress alternative explanations. They raise the probability of coordination, deliberate scene management, and narrative reinforcement by insiders. Going forward, Harpole's statements require independent corroboration by default and cannot be used to resolve ambiguities. The net effect is a structural shift in the case model. Coordination becomes the baseline assumption, and Harpole's interview functions primarily as evidence of misdirection, not clarification. Now, that's not a full report on Brian Harpole. That's just a summarized analysis from like a week and a half ago. That was written before the allegations that him and Erica Kirk were spotted at Fort Huachuca the day before Charlie was killed, and before the pictures came out of the SUV. Now, this is why I'm taking my time, because every detail matters. Every single detail, every picture, every newly released footage that I get that I hadn't seen before, every statement somebody makes, they're all factors in the equation. They're all another stroke of the brush. I keep accumulating the data, I keep running it through my models, and every time I do, the picture gets a little more clear. And like I said, by the first week of January, regardless of where we are in this case, I will have a report together, and I will debut it on my show, and then I will make sure that it's uploaded and available for the public, and then you guys can all go through it. And hopefully there's something in there that will help somebody to help, get some more transparency and maybe get some accountability and help us get a step closer to the truth. Because that's really what that report is all about. It's just about finding the truth. It's figuring out and proving without a shadow of a doubt who has been honest and who has been lying. And try to figure out and theorize why they're lying and what their motivations have been. And the more time goes on, the more we see. I think it's getting a little obvious. But like I said, give me another week or so, and by the first week of January, I'll have that all ready for you guys. But now, next order of business and why we're really here today. Now, I waited a long time to see what they were going to release in these Epstein files. And not because I was waiting to get the answers from our trusted federal government. I was hoping to get a couple of breadcrumbs I'd be able to use, but my expectations were always very, very low. They basically said, hey, we got thousands of pictures and videos of people getting abused, but we're not going to arrest anybody for it. Which, to be honest, it takes some balls to be able to do that. It really does. And again, zero accountability. Thousands of pictures. God knows how many victims. The most famous victim of which, Virginia Giuffre, the one who called out names, took her case to court, even wrote a book. She's dead right now. Like, just think about that for a second. The most famous of Jeffrey Epstein's victims is dead right now. And not for nothing, but we have a picture of her with Prince Andrew. But no accountability. What did he lose? His title? She lost her life. And for the record, to be fair and objective, because, again, everybody always tries to make everything about Trump. Yes, Virginia Giuffre worked for Trump at Mar-a-Lago. Yes, she got recruited there while working for Trump by Ghislaine and Jeffrey Epstein. But she never accused Trump of any wrongdoing. And I'm not pointing that out and putting emphasis on it to defend Trump. It's just the truth. Like, we got to be objective. We got to be honest. And I also think it's extremely relevant. And let me tell you why. So, Virginia Giuffre, she got discredited by the mainstream media in a very big way. And she got accused of backpedaling. But you need to understand something. It was extremely dangerous for Virginia Giuffre to come out and speak out against Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell to begin with. And not to mention the fact that she had 3 kids. I don't know their ages. I don't know exactly where they fit in the timeline of when she was speaking and who she was speaking to. But it makes all the sense in the world to believe that at some point she would have backpedaled if she would have believed that either her or her family would have been in danger if she didn't. I mean, think about it. Especially when you consider the fact of who Epstein was, how dangerous he was, the affiliations that he had. You know what I mean? And not to mention how hard the government worked to cover all this up. Virginia Giuffre was never going to get justice. And you don't think she realized that at some point? And who knows what kind of harassment that she dealt with. And again, I do not believe that that woman committed suicide. I don't. I think she got silenced. Is it possible that she committed suicide? Yes. But I don't think her family thinks that's what happened. And she stated on multiple occasions that she never would. Did she have some substance abuse issues? I mean, do you blame her? That doesn't mean that she killed herself. And when you count her in the cluster of all the other people, I mean, there's kind of a pattern, just saying. Just saying. But anyway, let me keep going. So I'm trying to do my best to make sure I'm looking at the camera and memorize as much as what I say. I don't have a teleprompter or anything yet. I'm probably going to get a teleprompter, though. It would make my workflow so much easier. But don't mind me. I'm going to read a little off the screen just to, like, keep things going a little bit. Okay, so my Virginia Giuffre timeline and why I find her to be credible and why I don't think that she killed herself. All right, you ready? So in the early 2000s, she gets recruited and trafficked by Ghislaine Maxwell and Jeffrey Epstein. In 2006, Jeffrey Epstein first gets arrested for abusing minors. Giuffre says that in 2007, she got calls on back-to-back days by Ghislaine Maxwell and then Jeffrey Epstein, where they were asking her if she spoke to authorities. She said that not long after that, the FBI tried to reach out to her and told her that she was identified as one of the victims. In 2008, Jeffrey Epstein gets a sweetheart non-prosecution deal because he was working with intelligence. But it also left him open for a civil suit. Now, Virginia Giuffre did not speak out about Epstein, and she did not file to be a part of that civil suit. Not right away, at least. She did eventually, but we'll get to that. In fact, there's a big gap between Virginia Giuffre had any mention or speaking on the record. Sorry. In fact, after 2007, when Virginia Giuffre spoke to the feds, there's a 4-year gap before she's caught on the record speaking of any of this again. And that's in 2011 when she was living in Australia and the FBI went all the way to her house to ask her about Epstein and Maxwell. Now, I find that very fascinating for a couple of reasons, actually. And not just because the FBI went all the way to Australia to talk to Virginia Giuffre about Jeffrey Epstein and Ghislaine Maxwell, but that was in 2011. That means that they did it during the Obama administration when Hillary Clinton was Secretary of State. And like, we're not talking about like the fat Hillary Clinton now that like gets on the news and just talks bullshit. Like, we're talking about prime evil 2011 alleged pay to play Hillary Clinton. I mean, and not to mention the fact that Epstein and Maxwell were a big part of their whole organization, you know, the Clinton Foundation or Global Clinton Initiative. I know Maxwell went on record saying that she helped start at least one of them. I wonder how those houses in Haiti are doing right about now. And also, let's not forget that Ghislaine Maxwell went to Chelsea Clinton's wedding in 2010, I believe, and they were actually pretty good friends. So the idea that the FBI is going all the way to Australia to try to get dirt on Hillary Clinton's friends while she's Secretary of State, like in her prime evil phase, like, I don't know, I find that fascinating. It's like, what kind of Game of Thrones type shenanigans go on behind the scenes in our government? You know what I mean? Like, it's freaking nuts. Oh yeah, and in case you're somebody like me that likes to keep track of these things, Robert Mueller was actually the director of the FBI during this time. Man, the FBI and the CIA must have really hated each other back then. All right, but back to the timeline. Okay, so early 2000s, Virginia Giuffre is getting trafficked. 2006, Epstein gets arrested. 2007, Epstein, Maxwell, and the feds are all trying to talk to Giuffre about this. Giuffre, I don't know if at this point she was already living in Australia, but the next time we hear from Giuffre is when she's in Australia in 2011. 2008, the civil suit starts, and then it's not till January 15 that Virginia Giuffre decides to file her decides to get in on that civil suit against Jeffrey Epstein as a victim. And I'm being specific about the month because it was January, okay? Trump didn't decide to run for president until June of 2015. And I don't know. I think that detail is important. All right, so when Virginia Giuffre files for the suit, she publicly names Prince Andrew as someone that she was trafficked to, which was a very big deal. That's what brought all the media attention in on Epstein at that time. Now, Ghislaine Maxwell calls Giuffre a liar for that, and then Giuffre sues Maxwell for defamation. They settle in 2017, in May of 2017, and Giuffre signs some sort of NDA. Now, again, details matter. The Me Too movement started in 2017, but it didn't start until October 2017, I believe. That was when Alyssa Milano started saying hashtag Me Too. I believe she got credited for that. I actually looked it up. I don't know if it was accurate or not. Back when Harvey Weinstein's accusers all started coming up. So, you know, like I said earlier when I was talking about my analytical report with Charlie Kirk, every detail matters. Every little thing that you might not even think of is a factor, especially if you try to break everything into math with priors and posteriors, which I'll get more into in the future. But every single detail is a factor in a math equation to try to get to the truth, especially when you're trying to use math to get to the truth that the government doesn't want you to know. Sometimes, like these probability models that I'm using, they've led me to a lot of theories that end up getting proven after the fact. But anyway, I mean, either way, in my personal and now professional opinion, I don't think Virginia Giuffre fits the profile as somebody that was just trying to get a payday, or definitely not someone who was trying to get attention. To be honest, I think it was the complete opposite. And I mean, if she really wanted a payday, she wouldn't have been talking good about Trump. Not in 2017. Like, think about it. If Virginia Giuffre wanted to tell stories to get attention and get paid, she had the perfect shot at Trump. She could have pointed the finger at Trump, and she didn't. She stuck up for the guy, even though Epstein and Maxwell recruited her while she was working for him. And to me, that says something. It does. You know, like it just does. So yeah, after going down all the rabbit holes and doing all the research, I believe what Virginia Giuffre said. I believe her story. And I think she got murdered for writing that book. And if you're interested in reading that book, it's called Nobody's Girl. You could order it now. All right, now, it was important for me to tell Virginia Giuffre's story. I followed her for the last decade. And when I found out she died, I was genuinely upset about it. And, at times while I was doing my research into Epstein and was reading about her and what she went through, it really did motivate me to dig a little deeper. And it gave me even more of a reason to want to figure out and find the truth than I already had. And I easily could have just dedicated an entire episode to her and everything that she went through, especially since she just had a book come out like a couple months ago. But, I want to do my part in making sure that people know her story and that they remember her and that they don't forget not only what she went through, but how our system failed her. I'm going to have different episodes, especially, when I start going more into my probability models and my own list, and she's going to come up again. And I also think that this should be a reminder why it's so important that we keep asking questions. We keep demanding the truth, and we keep pushing and demanding for accountability. Because the system didn't just let this happen. It kind of created it. It did create it. And, there were leaders worldwide that not only knew what was going on and were complicit, but engaged in this, including an American president that, apparently certain American presidents and people don't even have to show up to court to answer questions about this, which is crazy. It just goes to show that there is no accountability. Like the mainstream media they'll talk about things on the news and have these headlines and, stir up all this drama. But at the end of the day, nobody's getting locked up. Nobody's going to jail. There's no real accountability. But when journalists dig too deep and figure out something that they shouldn't know and start talking and telling stories that these people don't want out, they get found in bathtubs with their wrists slit or single car accidents. There's been a lot of those. The people that talk and try to expose the truth end up dead. And the people that are, abusing children, they get to live the good life. And that is not acceptable. We need to make sure that nothing like this ever happens again. And we cannot let anybody bully us. We need to make sure that nothing like this is ever allowed to happen again. And we need to make sure that the people that are trying to bully us and shame us and pass laws to make it somehow illegal in a way to even question them, that is unacceptable too. And we all have to speak up and get involved to make sure that does not happen. Because just look at the UK right now. Look at the UK. First, they take your guns. Then they start passing laws, taking away your freedom of speech. The next thing you know, you're making a joke on social media, and you got cops knocking on your door, locking you up. And the government's trying to force you into a digital ID, which you don't think that's going to lead to a social credit score? You don't think that if they're locking people up for text messages or social media posts, I should say, you don't think that people are going to end up getting fined? I think that the red light camera tickets that they have and the speeding tickets are insane. You don't think the day is going to come where you're going to make a joke about some kind of something racist or homophobic or anti-Semitic, and all of a sudden you're going to just get a deduction from your bank account, from your digital, that's connected to your digital ID with your social credit score? You don't think that's possible? I don't just think it's possible. I think that's what they have planned. Just look at China. Look at the UK. We're not that far away. Every single false flag that happens, they're trying to pass another law to chip away at our rights. They're coming after your guns. They're coming after the freedom of speech. It's a constant attack on the Constitution. The Constitution that was written the way it was for a reason. And it's up to us to defend it. It is all we have. Well, no, I shouldn't say that. It's not all we have. We have God. We have God. We have Scripture. But imagine that. Imagine if reading the Bible out loud in public became a crime. You know, especially if you talk about what happened to Jesus. Imagine what they're planning to do to your social credit score for that one. You know, it's like, I shouldn't even be joking about this. It's crazy. It's crazy. And just look where the corruption is coming from. Look where the bullshit is coming from. It's coming from the same people that were running Jeffrey Epstein. You know, and before we get to the main event of tonight's episode, I just want to say, I think that it is absolutely ridiculous when I hear people say that there is anything wrong with asking questions. It's not hateful. It's not. I'm sorry. In fact, if you're an American and you were born in America, I would say that asking questions is your birthright. And you know what else I think? I think that maybe the reason that people keep asking questions is because we're not getting the answers. You know, and they just think that, hey, maybe if we just get them to stop asking, then we'll never have to give them the answers. But we're not stupid. We see what's going on. We've seen what's going on for a long time. And it is going to stop one way or another. I promise you. Let's go down the list. They won't give us the answers about Epstein. They didn't give us the answers about COVID. They didn't give us the answers about 9/11, JFK, Martin Luther King, Malcolm X, the USS Liberty, Israel's nuclear weapons. You know, I've got a lot of questions that need answering. And I believe that it is my birthright as an American to ask them. And this other idea of, what do they call it? Judeo-Christianity? Listen, Judeo-Christianity is the most ridiculous thing I've ever heard of in my entire life. Okay? Now, if you're a Christian, would you ever try to tell a Muslim how to pray or how to worship? Would you want a Muslim telling you as a Christian how to pray, how to worship? Then why would you let a Jew? You know, at least the Muslims, you know, they at least respect Jesus. They love Jesus. They're waiting for Jesus to come back too. You know what they say about Jesus in the Talmud? Have you ever read it? That he's boiling in shit right now. You ever hear what Ben Shapiro says about Jesus? Go look it up. Look it up on Joe Rogan. What'd he say? He's just a nobody that died for his troubles like other people? Or he was just a Jew that died for his trouble, rebelling against the Romans like other Jews? I believe is more accurate. You know, I gave Candace Owens a lot of hell the other day over the way she handled the shit with Erica Kirk. But when I heard her lacing into Ben Shapiro and talking about the war on Christianity, not only did I just was just so happy to hear it from her, but I felt so bad about, you know, the episode I made. And I'm not going to take it down. I'm not a bitch. I'm not going to take it down. I got to own that. But I did send her a super and I apologized. And I'll apologize again. I'm apologizing now. And to everybody that attacked me and unfollowed me and, you know, for going at Candace, you know what? I deserved it. But I'm not here to talk about Candace Owens today. But if I wanted to, I could. You know why? Because I'm an American exercising the freedom of speech, and it's my birthright. You know who I do want to talk about right now? Because if we're going to get into Epstein, you got to have the backstory. And it's not just about Les Wexner and Edgar Bronfman, but you have to talk about Robert Maxwell, the one who recruited him to Mossad in the first place, allegedly, Ghislaine Maxwell's father. So, Robert Maxwell was born in Czechoslovakia, a part that I believe is now part of Ukraine. Anyway, so World War II, he fights for the British Army. After the war, he becomes a British citizen. He gets elected as a member of parliament, and at some point becomes a part of their intelligence. Now, the reason he became part of their intelligence was because he became this giant billionaire media mogul. And he had a lot of influence, and he had global distribution, which gave him ties all over the world. Now, Britain never trusted him. They always thought he was a scumbag. They spied on him. They eavesdropped on him. They thought that they didn't trust his allegiance. He had very strong ties with Israel, very strong ties to the KGB. They expected him of being a double, possibly triple agent, and they thought that he was being funded by the Soviets. Despite all this, though, he had newspapers, tabloids. He had a large influence over the public with this. Now, if you own a newspaper, you control the news. So if there's a scandal, if there's a politician that you want or don't want, you could help sway the public. Yes or no? So anyway, towards the end of this guy's life, in the later years, he starts getting into America. Now, he always had his newspapers. He was always big into science textbooks. I believe that he was selling English versions of science textbooks in all different countries, including Soviet Union. But once we get into the later 80s, he gets into American public school textbooks. I believe in 88 he bought Macmillan, which, if you're not familiar, at the time it was the third largest publishing company for American textbooks. After he bought Macmillan, though, he had a joint venture deal with McGraw-Hill, which made him the #1 publisher of textbooks at that time. If you went to school in the late 80s or in the 90s, there's like a 75% chance that you were getting influenced by a textbook that was connected to Robert Maxwell, and in turn, connected to Mossad. And that is just a fact. Now, anyway, so at some point in the 80s, he ends up working with Inslaw, which is a company that they basically created the OG Big Brother software for the DOJ called Promise. So Promise Software was the OG Big Brother software because it was like a management database where law enforcement and intelligence were both not only to plug all the information on people in, but they were able to integrate it and cross-reference it in real time. And this is in the 80s, before people even really had computers, or computers were very new and for people with more money. But anyway, so scumbag Robert Maxwell ends up getting to be the guy who's brokering the sale of this all across the world. He sells it to Britain, sells it to the Soviets, South Africa, Poland, Australia, Canada. He even sold it to Guatemala. I don't know how many countries he actually sold it to. But long story short, it comes out in 1991 that all the software that he was selling to all these countries was bugged. And it had a back door, meaning that all the information that all these countries were putting in was accessible to whoever had the access. And take a wild guess what country that was. So it comes out that they have the back door in April. October, it gets out that he's in Mossad. November, he's dead. Now, they found him off of his boat. They tried to say he had a heart attack and he fell over. Just like Natalie Wood. She just, late at night, just fell off the boat, just happened to die. I doubt it. I believe there were 2 autopsies and there were some discrepancies there. I mean, in all probability, he got made out to be a Mossad and he got whacked. Probably the Soviets, could have been Britain, who knows? I'm not making those accusations. But it didn't take long for the speculation about him being Mossad to be confirmed, because he got buried in Israel on the Mount of Olives, which is like the holy of the Holy Land. And of course, all the high-ranking intelligence officials were there at the funeral. And then, of course, what do you know? A week after the funeral, they find out that over $500 million is missing out of his businesses. And not just out of his businesses, but out of the pension funds. That's right. It wasn't enough for this guy to like spy on the whole world and be like a triple agent scumbag and recruit Jeffrey Epstein to Mossad. He had to rob the pensions of 30,000 of his own workers on the way out. Now, the story goes that money was used to prop up his business and his acquisitions and whatnot. But you got to remember something. We're talking about the guy who recruited Jeffrey Epstein. Jeffrey Epstein, who just happened to have all this money that no one ever knew where he got it from. Even though he got recruited by Robert Maxwell, was with Robert Maxwell's daughter, Ghislaine. They were partners in crime. And right around the time he died was when Jeffrey Epstein started popping up and all of a sudden has all this money. Not to mention the fact that during the 80s, when the same time that Jeffrey Epstein started working for Les Wexner, he was also working with a man named Stephen Hoffenberg. Now, Stephen Hoffenberg was famous for the Tower Finance Pyramid Scheme. Other millions and millions of dollars that just happened to disappear without a trace. That Epstein was connected to, but not charged. They said that he was hanging out with him, he did deals with him, but he wasn't guilty. There was no reason to investigate and prosecute. You see where I'm going with this? Now, it gets even better than this. Now, if you look at the timeline, which I love doing timelines. I don't do webs so much, although I'm going to have to start because now that I'm really getting into the research and getting into the nitty-gritty, I got to start connecting the dots. My buddy Daryl's always telling me that I'm like the guy from Always Sunny in Philadelphia. He's always sending me that meme with like all the papers in the back with the red strings around. I mean, maybe there's some truth to it. There's probably going to be in the near future if I don't get freaking killed by our government or Mossad. But anyway, oh yeah, and I said pyramid scheme when I was talking about Stephen Hoffenberg and the Tower Finance. I meant Ponzi scheme. Sorry. All right, so for my research, I make a lot of timelines. Like when I say that, I use AI. So what I do with AI, I use it to source information, to get legal documents, to confirm different pieces of information, and then I create timelines, and I use AI to identify certain patterns that I ask it to look for. Now, the data that I have in my files, I mean, like, see how this right here, like this is a little one. Oh shit! No, I gotta go to the. Okay, so this is a little one. There's like 50 a little over 50 nodes here. I have timelines that have like literally like 3,000 or 4,000 nodes, and that's one of the issues that I have is that the amount of computing power and time. It's a whole headache. Anyway, bottom line, I just worked up this quick little draft so that I could hit a couple key points to make my point for today's episode. All right, so 1976, Epstein joins Bear Stearns. The CIA also leaks a report about Israel's nuclear weapons, or that they suspect that Israel has between 10 and 20 nuclear weapons. They did a little investigation, and they ended up saying that they believed that they could link Israel to a couple of 100 pounds of highly enriched uranium that disappeared in Pennsylvania in the 60s. But we'll dig into that another time. All right, so 1978, Les Wexner acquisition of Mass Industries. Now, what it doesn't say here is that 1978 is also when Arthur Shapiro stopped paying his taxes. Now, if you've seen episode 1, you already know where I'm going to go with that. If you haven't, whatever, I'm going to do a little brush up now. All right, so 1979, Edgar Bronfman Sr. becomes acting head of the World Jewish Congress. 1980, Jeffrey Epstein becomes a limited partner at Bear Stearns. Now, when Jeffrey Epstein was at Bear Stearns, that's when he first started getting in that sphere of the wealthy elite. One of the accounts that he managed was actually that of Edgar Bronfman Sr. All right, the limited Lesnar launches Limited Express. That's right. 1981, it says Epstein leaves Bear Stearns. What it doesn't say is that Epstein had to step down over some alleged shady practices that I believe also had to do with Edgar Bronfman's account. Like there was some allegation of potential insider trading, like he lent somebody like 20 grand or something to, whatever. He had to step down. And Edgar Bronfman Sr. formally elected WJC president. All right, now we get to 1982. Epstein forms Intercontinental Assets Group. More acquisitions from Les Wexner. 1983, Mordecai Vanunu begins studies at Ben Gurion University while still tied to Dimona employee context. 1984, the Robert Maxwell acquisition of Mirror Group newspapers. Walsh Trucking antitrust case arc active. Now, Walsh Trucking was a mob or mafia affiliated trucking company that was owned by Frank Walsh, who was allegedly part of the LaRocca crime family in Pittsburgh. And he was also one of the shippers or one of the main shipping companies used by Les Wexner. Now, 1985, Arthur Shapiro is murdered. Now, he wasn't just murdered. This guy got executed mafia style, or they said that it was a La Cosa Nostra style hit. Now, he got executed the day before he was set to testify before Congress about illicit tax shelters and not paying his taxes. And long story short, it all lined up to the T with Les Wexner's acquisitions that I believe he was a part of working for, but I haven't found documentation to prove it. Promise Insula enters Chapter 11. Vanunu's employment ends. Robert Maxwell acquisition. More Limited Wexner acquisitions. Okay, now, Mordecai Vanunu. This guy spilled the beans about Israel having nuclear weapons. He was speaking to the press about it, and the story goes that Robert Maxwell got information about where Mordecai Vanunu was going to be and that he was talking to the press about Israel's illegal nuclear weapons and that he passed the information along, or his editor, a guy named something Davies, whatever. Maxwell, his editor, one of them passed the information along, and then Israel lured this guy, Mordecai Vanunu, to Rome, and they drugged him and abducted him. They had a secret trial, and they sentenced him to 18 years. It was reported that about 11 of those years he spent in solitary confinement. Like I said, this guy Robert Maxwell is just a freaking scumbag. All right, so we get to 1987, and Jeffrey Epstein starts working for Les Wexner. Jeffrey Epstein also starts working, it says around Stephen Hoffenberg's Tower Financial. Remember Stephen Hoffenberg, Tower Financial, the big Ponzi scheme where all those millions of dollars disappeared right around Jeffrey Epstein, but I mean, nobody ever thought to investigate him, or maybe they just decided not to because he was Mossad. I don't know. It says Charles Bronfman founds Claridge. All right, so in 88, Vanunu's convicted. Epstein funds another company. Wexner, more acquisitions. Maxwell, more acquisitions. McMillan, we talked about that before. 89, it's like Wexner and Maxwell were just like buying everything up. Like they were acquiring all these businesses and assets, and they were both dealing with Jeffrey Epstein, who was like their financial fixer, who was able to hide money and shady tax shelters and shell corporations and all this crazy crap. But, all of a sudden, Jeffrey Epstein has islands and mansions and private jets, and nobody knows where he got the money from. So give me a break. All right, now Danny Casolaro resumes investigative work in the early 90s, focused on Inslaw and Promise Affair as a central thread. So Danny Casolaro was an independent investigative journalist who was looking into the Promise software scandal, and he was also looking into like other scandals and suspicious deaths that he labeled the octopus murders. He had this belief that all these shady things that were going on behind the scenes, the deep state, he was calling it the octopus murders. Like he was connecting all these dots. He thought it was like one big organization. I mean, he was kind of right, but I don't think he knew how right he was, or maybe he didn't have all the details right, but he ended up getting killed over it. All right, so Casolaro's octopus framework expands, links Inslaw Promise to broader scandals, Iran-Contra and BCCI. Now, this is where I think it got dangerous for Danny Casolaro, because the Iran-Contra scandal, once you get into that, now you're getting into Wackenhut. I mean, they're selling guns illegally to arm rebels. They're bringing back cocaine. Yeah, Barry Seal was shipping that over so that they can distribute it to the black communities and then lock them up so that the same people that are selling the guns are able to profit off of locking up black people in the jails. You had Bill Clinton all over that because they were dropping off the cocaine in Arkansas. He was allegedly may or may not have been getting paid off. I don't know. They never questioned him about that one either. But BCCI Bank, that was like one of the hubs. That was like one of the banks where the deep state and all these shady people were like laundering money through. So you got Maxwell. I mean, I don't think there's been proven direct ties that Epstein was involved, but I mean, it's reasonable to believe. So bottom line, once Dan Casolaro starts sniffing around there and raising a lot of attention, and he's looking into other murders and he's trying to connect everything, he was basically a dead man walking. All right, here we go. Now we're at 1991. Robert Maxwell is preparing to purchase the New York Daily News. A programmer named Michael Riconosciuto submits a sworn affidavit that Promise software was modified to include a backdoor module for the use of espionage. At the end of that month, Robert Maxwell sells Paragon Press. Now we get to May. A man named Ari Ben-Menashe, who's former Israeli intelligence, is interviewed by investigators about the Promise software scandal. He claims that a man named Earl Bryan sold an enhanced version of Promise software to Israeli intelligence. In June, over in Ohio, the Arthur Shapiro murder report is conducted, which basically profiles Les Wexner as a possible person of interest. If you're interested, I did the full deep dive into Les Wexner in this case on episode 1. You could watch it now. But basically, the report comes out in June, and then a few weeks later in July, Les Wexner signs power of attorney and full financial control over to Jeffrey Epstein. That report, by the way, got buried by a police chief named James Jackson. He ended up getting reprimanded for that down the road, but no investigation into Les Wexner was ever done for that murder. Now, throughout this year, Danny Casolaro is conducting his investigation. He's making a lot of noise. He's attracting a lot of attention. He's allegedly getting death threats. And then tragically, on August 10th, 1991, they find his body in a bathtub in a hotel with over a dozen slashes to his wrists. They rule it a suicide, although his friends and family disputed it. I also want to add that Danny Casolaro was fully clothed in that bathtub when they found him, and that there was no suicide note. We get to October, and Seymour Hersh releases the Samson option. It's about Israel's undeclared nuclear program and how it affects conflicts in the region. He also touches on Promise software scandal, Danny Casolaro's recent suicide, and Israeli intelligence, including the Ari Ben-Menashe testimony into the Promise software scandal and the allegations that Robert Maxwell and his editor Nicholas Davies were both working for Mossad. And finally, within weeks of the release of the Samson option, Nicholas Davies is released from his job, and Robert Maxwell is found dead. Honorary funeral in Israel, the missing money, and then his daughter Ghislaine moves in with Jeffrey Epstein. You know, and there's something else really important that happened in 1991, and that is the founding of Study Group by Les Wexner and Charles Bronfman, or better known today as Mega Group. founded in 1991 by Les Wexner. The same year, he signed over full financial control and power of attorney to Jeffrey Epstein. Also founded by Charles Bronfman, the man whose brother Edgar Bronfman went back with Jeffrey Epstein to his time at Bear Stearns. Now, I'm going to give you guys a little bit of homework tonight. I want you to go online and look up the current members of Mega Group. And then, when you're done with that, I want you to look up Birthright. And then I just want you to think about the fact that Robert Maxwell was a British citizen, soldier, media mogul, born in Czechoslovakia. His daughter Ghislaine, her 7 siblings, and her mother were all born in France. And Jeffrey Epstein was born in Brooklyn, New York. You have 3 different people that trace back to 4 different nations. None of them are Israel, yet all 3 were Mossad. I hope you all have a Merry Christmas. Remember, be kind, be grateful, do a good deed for somebody. God bless you all. God bless America. And I'll see you real soon.